I'm going to take you through absolutely everything you need to know to play a Death Knight in MoP Classic. First up, what race do you want to be? Well, if you are Horde, it's going to be Orc. That's because they have a really powerful cooldown called Blood Fury, increasing your melee attack power and spell power for 15 seconds. This can be timed perfectly with your Pillar of Frost cooldown, which is another offensive cooldown we have. And they also have axe specialization, meaning you get 1% towards your expertise with axes. And if your best weapon happens to be an axe, then it's going to be even less stats you're putting into expertise to hit the cap. So orcs do really well as Death Knights. Worgen are going to be the ones in Alliance because they get 1% crit, and that's it really. Unfortunately, one thing that I'm not too impressed with in MoP Classic is the Death Knight talents. I really don't think we've done that well. So we get one at level 15, 30, 45. Ignore these levels. I don't know what on earth's going on there. That's a bug. But on the top line, I would recommend going with Plague Leech. Draw forth the infection from the enemy, consuming your Blood Plague and Frost Fever diseases on a target to activate 2 random fully depleted runes as Death runes. So the way Death Knight works, if you don't know, is we have 2 Blood, Frost and Unholy runes. And certain attacks will use, Unholy, Frost or Blood runes. Now, when it says here that it can activate 2 fully depleted runes as Death runes act as a Blood, Frost, or Unholy rune, meaning you can use your Death runes on whatever the hell you like, hence Plague Leech being really nice. So on the next line, level 30, we could go for Anti-Magic Zone if needed, placing a large stationary anti-magic zone that reduces spell damage done to party and raid members inside it by 40%. So all your raid can huddle up and get reduced damage from magic inside that zone. If you don't need it in the fight, though, you can go for Lichborn to become undead for 10 seconds. While undead, you're immune to Charm, Fear, Sleep, and your Death Coil spell will heal you. Again, if you don't use Anti-Magic Zone, the actual one I would recommend, however, is Purgatory and not Lichborn. Purgatory is basically a get-out-of-jail-free card when you die. When you sustain fatal damage, you instead are wrapped in a shroud of purgatory, absorbing incoming healing equal to the amount of damage prevented, lasting 3 seconds. If any healing absorption remains when it expires, you die. So basically, rather than dying, let's say you get hit by 100,000 of damage, and that 100,000 would have killed you. You then, for the next few seconds, have 100,000 in like a shield around you that will absorb 100,000 healing. And your healers, or whoever, you can drink a healing potion anyway, shape or form of healing. You need to heal 100,000 within those next few seconds, otherwise you will die. So it's kind of a get out of jail free card, but they can boot you back down to hell. So it can be really useful, but it's a bit of a, double-edged sword. Anti-Magic Zone is useful, but only, of course, if you can make use of it. On the third line, I would say to go for Death's Advance. You move 10% part faster at all times, and movement impairing effects may not reduce you below 70% movement speed. When activated, you gain 30% movement speed and may not be slowed below 100% of normal movement speed for 6 seconds. And it's a really amazing spell. On the next one, Death's Pact is the best. Drain vitality from an undead minion, healing the Death Knight for half of his maximum health and causing the minion to suffer damage equal to that health. Which basically is just a really good heal for yourself. On line 75, it's actually quite difficult to choose between Blood Tap and Runic Empowerment. So let's talk about both of them. Runic Empowerment. When you land a damaging Death Coil, Frost Strike or Rune Strike, which is, Unholy, Frost and Blood, you have a 45% chance to activate a random fully depleted rune, meaning you can get 1 rune black and do more abilities. Blood Tap, each Death Coil, Frost Strike or Rune Strike generates 2 blood charges up to a maximum of 12. And your Blood Tap will consume those charges to activate a fully depleted rune. If you don't know these abilities, don't worry, I'm going to be going over the full rotation in full. But basically, these are just 2 ways that you can get passive runes back. I personally like Runic Empowerment. Blood Tap is also an option. They're very, very close. And at level 90, I would go for Remorseless Winter. Surrounds the Death Knight with swirling frigid air, chilling enemies nearby, reducing their movement speed. You could go for Gorfine's Grip, Shadowy tendrils coil all enemies within 20 yards, pulling them to the target's location. That can be useful in certain instances if you're trying to get enemies in a certain place. Or there's desecrated ground, where basically you instead are immune to causes of loss of control. Basically, no CC for you, the Death Knight. I like Remorseless Winter, but all three of these aren't going to help with your DPS. Gorfine's Grip can help in very specific situations, but really these talents aren't great. Some specs have really good DPS increases, like Rogues have a really great one. Death Knights just have got the bad pick of the bunch. Moving on to the glyphs you're going to be using, I like to go for Glyph of Anti-Magic Shell, which causes your Anti-Magic Shell to absorb all incoming magical damage. I'd also go for Glyph of Outbreak, where it no longer has a cooldown, but does cost 30 runic power. And lastly, Pestilence, increasing the radius of your Pestilence effect by 5 yards. Now, if you don't know what these mean, don't worry, I'll be going over the full rotation straight after this chapter. So, on the minors, we'd go for something like Glyph of Army of the Dead, so basically that it no longer taunts, so that you can use it as a DPS cooldown without annoying the tank. Glyph of Tranquil Grip also does the exact same thing with your Death Grip. And lastly, Glyph of Death, where our Death Coil refunds some runic power, our main resource, when used to heal an allied minion, but will no longer trigger Blood Tap when used. So runic power is a one that we generate. Then we have our Blood runes and Unholy runes and Frost runes, and then Death runes you'll sometimes get, which I'll be explaining later. And what Death runes are is they count as all free, and that's the main resources that we will be using. For Mr. Pandaria Classic, I'm teaming up with Zygor to give you 20% off with code Javier. Zygor gives you the fastest and most efficient leveling experience. As you can see here, looking at killing snow leopards, I can even click all the different waypoint coordinates to see the fastest way to get to the different areas they may be in. It can also look at flight paths and show me which ways to go, including all of the different travel options. And when choosing quest rewards, it can even tell me which is the best upgrade for me. And this will be even spec dependent. I can click on the gloves, complete the quest, and then it will even tell me to equip them and shows me how much attributes and stats I will gain by equipping these items. Maybe even talents. I can use the talent advisor with Zygor, simply clicking that I want to be an Affliction Warlock, and it's going to configure it automatically to show me the best leveling build for Affliction for me. The fun doesn't stop there, though, because it's available for SOD, Classic, Retail, Leveling. I can choose zones I want to go into, and it'll tell me how to get there and do all of the leveling in that zone, even if you're going back to old zones that you've leveled out of. Dungeons, dailies, events, reputation, gold making, professions, pets and mounts, and achievements. You can use as little or as much as you like. And don't forget, you can get 20% off with code Javier and battle past everyone at lightning speed in Mr. Pandaria Classic. And now, of course, for the rotation. So first things first, we want to use Horn of Winter. This is going to last 5 minutes, and as you can see on the tooltip here, it generates 10 runic power and increases our attack power of all party and raid members by 10%. There we go, a bit slow updating. Now we have the buff. We're then going to go in and use our Plague Strike, and this is going to do 3 things. It's going to put physical vulnerability, increasing the damage taken by our enemy, Blood Plague, where they suffer shadow damage, and Frost Fever, suffering frost damage. We're going to use that to get those diseases up on the target. Now the next one we're going to use is Dark Transformation. It consumes 5 charges of Shadow Infusion on our ghoul to transform it into a powerful undead monstrosity. We're going to use this whenever we have 5 charges of Shadow Infusion. You do want to use the Raise Dead here. Raising a ghoul to fight by your side, you can have a maximum of 1 ghoul at a time. We do have the Master of Ghouls passive as well. The ghoul summoned by your Raised Dead spell is considered a pet under your control, unlike other Death Knight specs. Your pet does not have a limited duration, meaning it will last forever, and it reduces the cooldown on Raised Dead. It's normally 2 minutes, now it's a minute. Now, if you're wondering how we get these stacks on your ghoul, this comes from using Death Coil. When you use your Death Coil, it has a chance to give that stack onto your ghoul. So I just use Death Coil there, and as we go onto our ghoul, it has Shadow Infusion, damage dealt increased by 10%. Once it's at 5 stacks, we can use the Dark Transformation. After that, we're going to use Scourge Strike. This does require 1 Unholy rune, an Unholy Strike that deals weapon damage as physical, and in addition, for each of your diseases on the target, you deal additional damage. Meaning, of course, we do want to keep these diseases up on our target. One thing you'll also notice is that sometimes on your Death Coil, you will get free ones to use from Sudden Doom. Death Coil is basically your runic power spender, And we have something called Sudden Doom, which is here. Reduces the cost of Death Coil by 20% at all times, but while in Unholy Presence, it grants your main hand auto attacks a chance to make your Death Coil cost no runic power at all. Meaning that we want to be in Holy Presence and all the time. So use Death Coil basically whenever you can to make sure that you're not overcapping on runic power. If you're about to get maximums like 90 or more, or if you have a Sudden Doom proc, that's when to use it. We do have Outbreak here if we want to instantly apply Blood, Plague and Frost Fever to the target enemy, but the main thing is we're using Plague Strike with just an Unholy Rune to get this up, so mainly we are going to be using Plague Strike, not Outbreak, to do this. One interesting thing is Festering Strike. It's a Blood and Frost rune, an instant attack that deals weapon damage and increases the duration of your Blood Plague, Frost Fever and Chains of Ice effects on the target. Chains of Ice is a slow, by the way. So when we use Festering Strike, it refreshes our Frost Fever and Blood Plague, meaning we're not going to have to keep refreshing it with Plague Strike. The next ability I want to show you is Blood Tap. Each Death Coil, for instance here, I used Death Coil a few times, I get 4 charges of Blood Charge. Now basically, you get up to a maximum of 12 charges, and it works from our Death Coil. And when we use Blood Tap, it's going to consume those blood charges to activate a random fully depleted rune as a death rune. So you can see I've got 4 death runes and 2 unholy runes. I use these unholy runes, and they're my death runes, because remember they work as anything. And as you can see, all of my runes are on cooldown. But when I use my Blood Tap, if I have any charges, it's basically going to consume 5 charges, and I get a... trying to explain this, and I'm not really looking at the abilities. Basically, it's going to take one of your runes back off cooldown for you. If you have truly run out of runes as well, we can actually use Plague Leech on a 25-second cooldown, basically consuming the diseases on the target, so Blood Plague and Frost Fever, in order to actually activate 2 fully depleted runes as death runes. So you can use that, and then basically use your Plague Strike or Outbreak if you need to get those diseases back on the target. So use Plague Strike when you go in, get those diseases up, use Dark Transformation whenever you can, and try and keep as high uptime on it as possible, which you'll get from using Death Coil when you've got your minion up. And then it's going to be using Festering Strike to refresh those diseases, Death Coil being your runic power spender, Scourge Strike as well whenever we can, Festering Strike obviously to refresh your diseases, and Blood Tap to get your runes back off cooldown, and Lit Plague Leech if needed. Now if we're in an AoE situation, we can use Pestilence. So you get your diseases up with a Plague Strike and then use Pestilence, and as you can just see, it flew out to all the nearby training dummies. So what Pestilence does is it expands your diseases to nearby enemies. You then put your Death and Decay down, which basically is going to do loads of damage to all of the enemies in this area. Then you've got your Blood Boil. We're going to use this. It uses blood runes. This is going to boil the blood of all enemies within 10 yards, dealing damage, so doing AoE damage. Does more damage if they have got Blood Plague or Frost Fever on them, meaning you obviously want to use your Pestilence first. Still use Dark Transformation whenever you can. Death Coil as your runic power spender. And then we can use Icy Touch as well. And what this is going to do is actually turn your runes into death runes as well. And then if you've got nothing else to press, it's Scourge Strike, and that's the AoE rotation. We then have our cooldowns and when to use them. So let's first start off by going over the aggressive cooldowns. So we have Summon Gargoyle, where you literally summon a gargoyle. This is a really powerful cooldown. It scales with your haste and attack power and deals single target damage. So use this whenever you can. Empower Rune Weapon grants you a nice boost in runic power and reactivates some of your runes. So try and make sure you're using this after you've used up all your runes, which will let you do Scourge Strike many times in a row. We then have Unholy Frenzy, which increases your haste by 20% for 30 seconds at the cost of some health. You want to use this with your gargoyle and your army to buff them even more, because it will all scale with this. So then we go on to Army of the Dead. You channel it for a few seconds, basically summoning a huge army of ghouls that will then attack your target. It's one of my favourite cooldowns in the game. It's very chaotic. Going on to defensive cooldowns, we have Death Pact, where you basically drain vitality from your undead minion, healing you. Anti-magic zone, which is really cool. I can put it down here, for example. This basically is going to reduce spell damage done to any party and raid members within it by 40%. Anti-magic shell is basically a personal version. This is actually going to absorb 100% of damage dealt by harmful spells up to a maximum of 50% of your health, and prevents the application of any harmful magic effects onto you. And any damage absorbed will actually generate runic power for you to use as well. Lastly, Icebound Fortitude. You freeze your blood and become immune to stun effects and reduce all damage taken for 12 seconds. So for the stat priorities, we follow something quite simple. Number 1, strength, increasing your attack power. Secondly, we need to make sure we're hitting our hit cap and expertise cap. Now, hit rating is actually your chance to miss, so you want that at 7.5. Expertise you want at 7.5%, and that's your chance for the chance for the boss to actually dodge or parry your attacks, as opposed to you missing. One thing to mention is that if you're a Draenei, first of all, everyone needs 2,550 hit to hit the hit cap. Same with expertise, 2,550. If you're a Draenei, your racial heroic presence means you only need 2,210 hit rating. Expertise, however, is where the class's specializations come in. So dwarves, maces, humans, maces and swords, and orcs is axes, meaning on the expertise, those classes, or races even, only need 2,210 expertise rating to hit their cap. After that, we go on to haste rating. That's the next most beneficial stat for us. This is going to increase how quickly you attack, and also your rune regeneration, as well as the attack speed of your ghoul, and also your gargoyle. This is really, really important because of passives we have, like things like Sudden Doom, where your main hand auto-attacks have a chance to cause your next death coil to cost no runic power. The faster we get auto-attack, the more we're going to get death coils for free. And remember, death coils are what basically give our minion stacks to get dark transformation, which is one of our main cooldowns. So haste is really important. After that, it's going to be crit chance, which is pretty obvious. And then lastly, mastery, increasing how much shadow damage we do. Looking at the gems you're going to want, it's going to be reverberating primal diamond in your meta slot. If you are struggling getting that expertise cap, then go for precise primordial rubies. Otherwise, bold will be fine. If on your yellow slots, the socket bonus is, 60 mastery or something ridiculous like that, then just go for a bold primordial ruby. The strength you'll get will weigh out the benefit of the other socket bonus. However, if it is strength that you've got on your socket, then go for fierce vermilion onyxes. Again, just like in your red slot in the blue one, if you're having issues with the hit cap, we have River's Hearts. If you're not having issues with it, go for etched imperial amethysts. For the enchants we can go to, it's pretty straightforward. As seen here, you can pause the video and see the ones you can get. What I will mention though is that you can also get a socket on your bracer if you're a blacksmith, same on the gloves. Everyone can put the living steel belt buckles on, anger hide leg armor, but level workers get, better ones. And on your weapon, don't forget, of course, it's the Death Knight's Rune of the Fallen Crusader. Same again on the professions. This is what you get from each profession. Most of them add about 320 strength, the odd ones out being tailoring. Herbalism does give haste. It's the only gathering one that really gives anything beneficial, hence why I put it on here. But I wouldn't really recommend it still. I'd recommend you go with 2 of these main ones over here. For your consumables, we're going to be going with the Flask of Winter's Bite, adding strength by 1,000. We're going to be going with Great Pandaria Banquets, of course, if you're in raids, etc. For the food, if you're not using feasts, it's black pepper ribs and shrimp, or eternal blossom fish, and then 250 strength, which is the lowest one. It's going to be charbroiled tiger steak. And your potion is this one here, Potion of Mogu Power, increasing strength by 4,000. And that's it, guys. That's everything you need to know to play Unholy Death Knight in Mr. Pandaria Classic. I hope it was helpful for you. If it was, do leave a like and subscribe, of course. Check out down below if you do want to get Zygor, it's 20% off with code Javier. It does truly make everything so much easier in all aspects of WoW and all versions of WoW. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by joining Patreon, also linked in the description. I've got LVI profiles, spreadsheets, and all sorts, and even including a VIP channel in Discord where you can get extra help from me if you need it. And if you're looking for other specs, of course, then check out the playlist you see on screen now.